Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Ruby Ramirez, and on behalf of the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, we would like to say thank you for joining us. Today's presentation is presented by the Central Valley Business Diversity Partnership between the City of Fresno, the Hmong Chamber of Commerce, Jacara Movement, the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, and the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce. Before getting started, I want to share a quick tutorial on using the chat box tools. If you are accessing the webinar using a laptop, you can simply click on the chat icon of your screen. If you are using a tablet, please select the participant icon, and on the left side, you will see the chat feature. If accessing a mobile device, please tap the More option on your screen to access the chat feature. Please send us your questions throughout the presentation. I also want to remind you that all participants will receive a copy of this webinar recorded. I would like to recognize the following sponsors that allow our organization to provide these weekly webinars to our business community. Thank you to Bank of America, Comcast, Bank of the West, Chevron, Federal Home Loan Bank of San Francisco, Donna G. Sales, Wells Fargo, Tri-Counties Bank, JP Morgan Chase & Co., and Union Bank for your support. Here's the agenda for today's presentation. I would like to remind you to please send your questions using the chat tool. I would like to share with you about the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation. We are a nonprofit organization in the Central Valley with a mission to promote education and self-sufficiency by fostering entrepreneurship. At this time, our team is providing the following core programs remotely to our community: our virtual technical assistance, weekly webinars, and microloan program. To learn more about our programs, please call us at 559-222-8705, or you can visit our website to sign up for our weekly webinars. Now, I would like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Victor Riviesca from the SBA. Welcome, Victor, and thank you so much for joining us. Victor, are you there?
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right, sorry. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here today. Thank you, Ruby, and to the Hispanic Foundation. Let me see, I have a PowerPoint, Ruby.
Okay, I just made you host, and let me stop sharing.
Thank you. All right, so I have a presentation for today. I know that it's been a little difficult in the past few webinars only because there's a lot of information that's coming out. There's a lot of information that's changing by the minute, by the day. So what we have here today is the most recent presentation we have with the most up-to-date and relevant information on the PPP loan forgiveness. One thing I will ask is if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. That way we can answer them as we go. Or if you do have questions, hold on to the end so that we can then go ahead and answer the questions at the same time. If you are on a phone or on your computer, please mute yourself if you can. That way it gives everybody the opportunity to listen to the information, and we can get through the questions a lot quicker. Other than that, I'll start off by telling everybody that the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, there's a few things that have rumored out, and this is just a rumor, that the banks are telling folks to hold on just in case there is a blanket forgiveness. In other words, they're telling you not to submit your loan forgiveness package because the IRS may forgive your loan completely. At this point in time, that is not true. We are accepting PPP loan forgiveness packages. I highly recommend that you submit those to your bank or your financial institution. If they have any questions, please send them our way and we'll go ahead and work with them so that we can get your application and your process done and moving forward. So we're going to talk about the forms that are needed for the loan forgiveness application. There is a brand new form for those that receive a $50,000 or less PPP loan and looking for forgiveness. It's fairly easy. Then you have the 3508S, which is the traditional one. And then we have the short form 3508EZ, the instructions, the long form, as well as the new rules as of 6/11 that have come out. And last but not least, the simpler process for those of you that received $50,000 or less. So the new form, 3508S, forgiveness applications for use by the PPP borrowers applying for forgiveness on loans in a total amount of $50,000 or less. It's very important. If you have $50,100, you will not be able to use this form, unfortunately. We've had questions come up by saying, well, Vic, I have a $55,000 loan. Can I use this form to get the first $50,000 forgiven and then continue making payments on the remaining $5,000, or use the $5,000 on the other form? And the answer is no. You have to have a total of $50,000 or less for the use of this application. For those borrowers that together with their affiliates receive a totaling more than $2 million or more, you do have other forms that you need to use, but I don't think that's the case for a lot of the folks here. And last but not least, each reference to SBA form 3508, 3508Z, or the lender's equivalent form, all the information on the forms themselves, the instructions, how to fill them out, who they go to, everything is on the U.S. Treasury website. One of the questions that have come up recently is, when is the SBA going to add this to their web portal? Are they going to do it online like they do the EIDL and things like that? The SBA portal has information on the PPP, but everything, all the forms, the applications, and everything else is on the Treasury website, number one. Number two, the processing of the PPP loan applications or the forgiveness applications, they're not done online from the borrower to the lender, okay? So it's very important that you have to print this out and pull your supporting documentation and give that to your bank or to your lender in order for your process to start or begin. Otherwise, there's not going to be an application in there, and there are timelines, and we'll get to those here in a bit. The loan forgiveness process for lenders. This is so for those of you that are borrowers, not banks or lenders, but this is what they have to do in order to submit your application. I'm going to go through it really quick, only because you don't see this process. But the process is the borrower submits an SBA form or the lender equivalent form to the bank. You confirm receipt of the borrower certifications contained in the 3508, and then you confirm receipt of the documentation of the borrower, verifying payroll, non-payroll costs as specified in the instructions to the form, or the lender's equivalent form. The borrower shall not receive forgiveness without submitting all required documentation to the lender. Again, it's very, very important when we talk about supporting documentation that you have all your receipts, your payroll checks, or payroll stubs, payroll reports, anything to prove that the money was used for the appropriate categories. This is all for lenders. So this is the form that we talk about when it comes to loan forgiveness. This is 3508EZ. Okay, this is the one that was redone. This isn't the long form that we're talking about. This is the revised short version form. This is the short version form. As you can see, it's fairly simple. They do ask for SBA PPP loan numbers, the lender loan numbers. One thing that we have here, and there's always a question on, is the EIDL advance amount and the EIDL application number, okay? If you did receive an EIDL advance, you do have to report that on this document. If you have an EIDL application number but did not receive the advance, you do not need to put that information here. So that's very, very important for everyone to know. If you did receive an advance, you have to put it down here along with the application number. If you did not receive an advance, but you do have an EIDL, that information does not go here on this form. One of the things that we're going to cover are the calculations so that you know what we're looking for. If you do have any questions or need further assistance, you can always reach out to myself or to the ladies at the Fresno Hispanic Foundation or to any of our other resource partners so that we can help you get that information correct. This is the 3508S, and this is the one that was revised for those of you that received $50,000 or less in the PPP loan. As you can see, there are no calculations really to do. The information on the top is still the same, right? It's still asking for the EIDL advance and asking for the EIDL application number, but it's not really asking you for a calculation. So this is the one and only the one for those that receive $50,000 or less, so that you can go ahead and use this one instead of the traditional form. So moving on to deadlines and information that was updated. The new deadline is 10 months to request forgiveness. Begins after the end of your loan forgiveness covered period, okay? And we'll give you an example here in a bit. And the interest will continue to accrue during the deferment period. In other words, if you've already used your money, but you have not submitted your loan or your forgiveness application, interest is still accumulating. That's why it's very, very important that if you have not requested forgiveness for your PPP, that you do so as soon as possible so that your interest stops and you don't have to accrue that as we move forward. So here's an example of what how the deadline works based on the period that you're using. Let's say I have a business and my PPP loan was dispersed on June 25th. That is the day that I received my money. My covered period ends December 10th, 2020. In other words, I'm using the 24-week period to use all my money, okay? I must ask for forgiveness by October 10th, 2021, or any time before that, okay? If not, then I must begin making my payments on or after October 10th, 2021, okay? Now, for those of you that had the 8-week period, if you remember the PPP in the beginning stages of the program said you had 8 weeks to use your money. And in this case, all we have to do is change the date. The covered period ends 8 weeks or 2 months from the day that you receive your disbursement. So if we use that information plus 10 months, that is the date that you need to start making payments or request for forgiveness. Okay, so it's very, very important. Again, the 24-week period or 164 days begins the day that the proceeds are dispersed. Or 2, the alternative covered period, if you pay weekly or every 2 weeks on your payroll, begins on the first day of the first pay period following disbursement, okay? Questions so far? If you do have any questions, again, please put those in the chat box so I can so we can start working through them as we go through the presentation, or if you want to hold on to your questions to the end of the presentations, we can do that as well. So moving on to reduction in full-time employees, that's what FT stands for, full-time employees. There are safe harbors, and safe harbors are policies to help the employer with the full-time employee policy. So safe harbor rule number 1, for borrowers that were unable to return to the same level of business activity the business was operating at before February 15th due to compliance with requirements for guidance issued between March 1st, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. And it gives you the different agencies that have something to do with that, or related to worker or customer safety requirements related to COVID-19. What this means is that no fault of your own, as far as a business owner or your business, because your business was not able to return the full-time employees that you had prior to February 15, 2020. It could have been that Fresno County, for example, was always in the purple zone, and it was hard to get out of the purple zone, where we're stuck there. Where we got out, we were opening, and all of a sudden we came back, or Kalosha comes down and says, well, you can't open because of this, or you can't open because of that. The CDC gave other guidelines. Essentially what it's telling you is you were forced to close your business, or you were forced to reduce the type of operations your business used to have, and therefore you were not able to meet your full-time employee requirements prior to February 15, 2020. Just a reminder as to what that means is the intent of the PPP loan was that, one, you would rehire or hire the same amount of the full-time employees that you had prior to February 15, 2020, okay? That's the whole intent of this program. And so one of the questions in the application, and either one that you have there, one of those questions is, did you or were you able to meet your full-time employee requirements, okay? The rule number 2 says borrowers are both unable to rehire individuals who are employees of the borrower on February 15, 2020, and unable to hire similarly qualified employees for unfilled positions by December 31st, 2020. What the safe harbor rule means is we do, as business owners, have had the opportunity to call those employees that we had prior to February 15, 2020. Unfortunately, some of those employees said, no, I'm not going to go back. And because of unemployment and the stimulus that the unemployment was giving, I believe it was an additional $600 per pay period. Now it's additional $300 per pay period. To them, it's like, I'll rather take my unemployment than go back to work. Well, one of the things that allows us as employers, as business owners to do is, if I'm not able to hire back Jose because Jose is stuck on unemployment, I'm able to hire somebody else to replace Jose. But unfortunately, because the work that I do or that Jose does is very skilled, or it's a specific profession, or it's very difficult to fill that position, I am unable to hire someone for that position or someone to replace Jose. Now, how do you prove that you're actually trying to hire somebody else to replace that employee? Well, if you're going to post it on a jobs listing, for example, Glassdoor, you can post it with the Workforce Investment Board. Doesn't matter, but as long as you have that posting available and a job description that position is available for you in your company, you're meeting the qualifications for the full-time employee requirements, because you're doing what you can to try to get that position filled. Other exceptions, again, employee refuses return to work for the employer. One of the things that you do as an employer have to do is you have to make a written offer of employment at the same wages and hours. It's not just a phone call. Again, we're using the example of Jose. Hey, Jose, I need you to come back to work today. Jose says, no, Chale, I'm going to stay with my unemployment. I have to give him his job back in writing with the same hours and same wages that he did have prior to February 15, 2020. If he refuses after I give him that written offer of employment, I have to document his refusal. So I'm going to give him a copy of the letter giving him his job back. And on the copy that I have for myself, I am going to annotate his refusal on the date and the time that he chose not to come back to work. And number 3, you have to inform the unemployment office within 30 days. So this falls on you as the employer, okay? And you do have to show this on your PPP forgiveness application in order for it to be considered. So it's very, very important that we look at these steps and that we follow them so that we don't get stuck as employers or business owners with a loan application that's declined or that your loan is not fully forgiven. Another exception, if you fire the employee for cause, employee voluntarily resigns, employee voluntarily requests schedule reduction in writing. Again, if the employee was working 40, 50 hours a week prior to February 15th, but now they only want to work 20, 25 hours, they have to write a letter to you stating that they want a reduction in hours. Also very important when you're talking to the Labor Commissioner's office, because they're going to ask, well, what happened? Again, safe harbor rules, as we mentioned, we talked about, borrower reduced its full-time employee levels in the period beginning February 15, 2020, and at April 26, 2020, and restored full-time employee levels by December 30, 2020, or the end of the covered period. So it's full-time employee level in the borrower's pay period. That included February 15th. So this is an example of a business that used a safe harbor rule. So it's very, very important that we understand that when you get that PPP loan, you have a specific amount of time to get your business back up to the employee levels that you had prior to February 15th, 2020. All right, I'm gonna start asking answering some other questions. Is this for funds already issued? Are you taking new application requests for PPP? At this point, all the funds have been issued. I know that Congress and the White House are currently trying to work out the remaining $168 billion left in the pot that has not been issued, and they're trying to figure out what to do with it. We don't know if they're going to give us more money so we can take on new applications. At this point in time, we don't know, but we do know that there are funds available. They just don't know where to put them or how to use them. Another question is, we applied and received the PPP, but have not received the loan documents with the loan number. Who do I contact to get this information? If you've already received the PPP, but don't have any other information, you have to contact the lender or the bank that gave you that funding. If you do not have their contact information, such as PayPal, Cabbage, or those fintech companies, shoot me an email, and I'll put all this stuff on the chat, fresno@sba.gov, and I can get you the contact person so that they can give you the information for the bank and financial institution so that you have that information with you. Again, the PPP, unlike the EIDL, is administered and operated by the bank or financial institution who gives it to you, not necessarily the SBA. We're working in the background. The banks are the ones that are managing and funding these type of loans. What is the difference between choosing an 8-week versus a 24-week? It all depends on how you're going to use your funding. If I have a loan for $50,000, but I only have one employee, I'll probably choose a 24-week period because I want to extend the amount of time I have to spend that money. A lot of the times, if you have high employee counts, you might want to use the 8-week because you know you're gonna need that for payroll. So you're gonna use your money a lot faster than you would if you had less employees. So it's really up to you how you want to do that. What is the rehiring requirement? Is it a number of employees, a percentage, a dollar amount? How do we know what are the dates of our covered period? The covered period you choose. Anything prior to June 26th, I believe, of 2020, you're under the original 8-week covered period. After June 26, 2020, that's when the new CARES Act came out, the second one, the second stimulus, as everybody knows it. That gave you the ability to do the 24-week period. But you, as a business owner, have the ability to choose if you're going to use the 8-week or the 24-week. Just remember, though, if you're going to use a 24-week period to use all that funding, but you spend everything within the first 12 weeks, you have to ask for forgiveness that time. Otherwise, you're going to start accruing interest for that full 24 weeks. So essentially, it's as a business owner, you want to make that decision. How fast and how soon do I want to spend this money? Do I use an 8-week or do I use a 24-week? All right, so we'll move on the presentation here. So the PPP Flexibility Act and the IFR 611-2020, 612-2020, maximum payroll cost per employee states $15,385 for an 8-week period, or $46,000, 154 for a 24-week period. That's the maximum payroll cost per employee. Maximum payroll cost per owner, employee or self-employed, in the 8-week period is $15,385, or the 24-week period, the lower of $20,000 or 2019 monthly average times 2.5. Now, these figures that I'm giving you right now are on the per or every a 2-month average. Okay, so if you take 15,385, you divide that by 2, that's going to give you your maximum monthly payroll expenditure for employee, or if you're self-employed or owner, then 15,385 divided by 2 is going to give you the maximum you can pay yourself as a business owner, or the lower of 20,000, or what you ever reported in 2019. It's very, very important that you do this. We have had a lot of business owners that say, hey, I got a $60,000 PPP loan. In 2019, I was paying myself $4,000 a month. But now that I have this PPP loan and I'm the only owner operator of my business, I'm going to give myself an additional $6,000 raise. I'm going to pay myself $10,000 a month. You can't do that. So it's very, very important that you look at the maximums that you can do per month, or that you look at what you had in 2019 average, and you multiply that times 2.5. No payments on the loan before SBA remittance date of your to your lender, or notify your lender that no loan forgiveness is allowed. In other words, you cannot pay your loan prior to the date that your lender gives you. Okay, so it's very, very important. If the lender says your first payment date is going to be October 1st, 2020, you cannot pay us or your lender prior to that. It's very important. Again, deadline forgiveness is 10 months from the end of the covered period. So again, if you use the 8-week, so at the end of the 8th week plus 10 months, or 24 months is your covered period, you have 10 months from that point to pay, or I'm sorry, to ask for forgiveness. And December 31st is the deadline to rehire or refill those positions that you had prior to February 15, 2020. As you know, in the first CARES Act, which everybody knows or remembers it as Stimulus Package 1, this is when the first PPP whole thing started. The eligible payroll costs. I'm sorry, this is the CARES Package 2. So the payroll costs have been reduced to 60%. Whereas the original stimulus package was 75%, and then 25% for eligible costs. So right now, eligible payroll cost as it is today, you have to use 60% of that for payroll. I'll give you an example. I get $100,000, $60,000 of that $100,000 PPP loan must be used for payroll costs. These payroll costs include salary, wages, commissions, or similar compensation, cash tips or equivalent, vacation, parental, family, medical, or sick leave if you pay if you're paying into that, allowance for separation or dismissal, bonuses, hazard pay, employee benefits including group health care insurance, retirement, state and local taxes, not federal. Very, very important. Only state and local. If you're an independent contractor, sole proprietor, same thing, wages, commissions, income, net earnings from self-employment, or similar compensation. So it's very, very important that we look into this. Bonuses, can you give a bonus and can that be considered eligible payroll cost? The answer is yes. Just remember, one of the things that we're going to look at is show me proof of that bonus and we got to look at how much we're giving the bonus on. If we give ourselves as a small business owner a bonus, right? Let's take the example. I was making $4,000 in 2019 per month. Now I want to give myself a bonus. I can't give myself a $50,000 bonus with the PPP funding, because they're going to be like, what happened? You know, $50,000 bonus. You could understand $1,000, $5,000, but $50,000 is going to be very difficult for someone to accept. So it's very, very important. The biggest question is, what is considered a non-payroll cost? Using the example I used earlier, I have $100,000. 60% or $60,000 of that must be used for payroll. $40,000 or 40% of that must be used for non-payroll costs. And these non-payroll costs include interest on mortgage obligation for real or personal property. Only the interest on your mortgage, not the mortgage payment itself. So it's very important that if you have a payment that includes the interest and everything else in it, or what they call a P&I, that you only pay for the interest, and you have to show proof that your payment was for the interest only. So that's something to really consider. Business rent lease for real or personal property. If you're renting your space or the building or your shop or whatnot, you can use the PPP to pay for that rent or that lease on your facilities. Utility payments for electricity, gas, water, transportation. Example, fuel for business, auto. Just the fuel, not the auto. Very important, especially for those of us that are independent contractors, self-employed employees that use our own personal vehicle for business purposes. The question is, can I make a payment on my car? Well, did you pay your car through your business? In other words, is the business paying for your car? And you have to show proof that your business is paying for a car, and you have commercial insurance and all these other things. So very important that we distinguish the difference between personal and business. Telephone and internet access. Other things on non-payroll costs, they must have been paid or accrued during the covered period. In other words, you must have been paid between February 15, 2020, plus 8 weeks, or the 24-week period, depending on which one you choose. Must be paid on or before the next billing date, even if the date is after the covered period, and advance payments are not forgivable. It's very important. A lot of people had told us, well, Vic, my bill was $200 this month, and I know my bill is going to be $200 next month. I'm going to pay my bill for next month with the PPP funding so that it doesn't increase. You can't do that. It has to have been expended, and then you have to pay it off at that point. An example for on this would be June 1st through July 26th is going to be my covered period, which is the 8 weeks. Borrower pays May and June electric bill during covered period, and July bill is received on August 10th. In other words, the next billing cycle. The May and June payments are a forgivable expense because they were paid during the covered period. However, the August payment is forgiven for July 1st through July 26th only, because it was still incurred through the covered period. So as you can see, it's very important that when you look at the covered period at 8 weeks or the 24 weeks, this is where it also comes into play, not just your full-time employees. So the process for loan forgiveness, you submit the forgiveness application or package to your lender. The lender reviews, and they have up to 60 days to review your package. They will send it over to the SBA for determination and decision. The lender will deduct the EIDL advance from the loan forgiveness request. The SBA has up to 90 days to review your package and application. The lender then will notify you, the borrower, of the forgiveness amount or the total decision, depending on what your package contained. The remaining balance due must be repaid within the 2-year time frame. The new rules for that is a 5-year if the PPP was on or after June 5th, with the 10-month deferment built in. Okay, so it's very important. Can you get the 2-year note changed into the 5-year note? In other words, if you got your PPP prior to June 5th, can you request to make that payment, or I'm sorry, the balance of your PPP loan in over a 5-year period? yes, you can, but you have to tell the lender. Okay, again, the lender is the one that can change the notes in order for us as the SBA to go ahead and make those changes. If the lender does not make that change, then you're still liable to make those payments and pay the loan off in full within that 2-year period if you received your PPP prior to June 5th. When would you reasonably expect to start making your payments? When the SBA either remits an approved loan forgiveness amount to your lender. In other words, if your full loan amount is not forgiven, whatever that balance is, we give that back to your lender. Then they tell you when your first payment would be. Or at your lender that no loan forgiveness is allowed. In other words, if you're not submitting all your proper documentation to prove that your PPP loan was used for approved payroll and approved non-payroll costs, it might be declined. So that's why it's very important to keep your documentation in line. And we'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. Remember, we have up to 90 days from the time that the lender submits the request to us. Okay, that's always going to be a challenge because you can submit it on November 1st. You got to remember they have 60 days, which takes them into December 30th or December 31st. If they wait until the last date to submit it to the SBA, then you tack on an additional 90 days. So it's very important that you maintain that communication with your lender so that you know when they send it to the SBA. 24 weeks equals 6 months plus 10 months deferral equals a total of 16 months. If you do not request forgiveness, deferral period begins at the end of the 24-week period. So in other words, if you know you've used that money for non-forgivable items and you know you're going to take on that loan anyway, your payback period, in other words, will begin at the end of the 24-week period. Can you use the 3805 or 3508Z? You must choose one of three. One, are you a sole proprietor with no employees? You did not reduce the wages more than 25% and did not reduce full-time employees, or did not reduce wages more than 25% and unable to operate due to compliance from HHS, CDC, or OSHA. Just a reminder what the 3508Z and the difference between the three applications. The 3508S, as in Sam, is the simplified form. This is for those of you that receive $50,000 or less. The 3508Z, you must choose one of these in order for you to take advantage of this application. If you do not fall under one of these three, then you have to use the long form, okay? Very important. So, calculations. How does this work and how do you get your loan forgiven? And how do you know you got the right amount in the appropriate boxes? So line 5 on the EZ application, you add the amounts in lines 1, 2, 3, and 4. The payroll, the interest, the rent, and utility. And let's make that an example of $45,000. Okay, that includes my allowed payroll cost and my allowed non-payroll costs, and my total amount is $45,000. However, the total amount of my PPP loan was $30,000, right? Total cost, 60% requirement, divide line 1 by 0.60. It comes out to $33,333. So with that, my total forgiveness amount is going to be $30,000, right? Does everybody see how that works? If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, or we'll come back and we'll look at that calculations. The reason this worked is that my total PPP loan amount was $30,000. The minimum that I had to use under the payroll cost 60% requirement was $33,333, which I completely exceeded that. So my total forgivable amount is $30,000, which is the total amount that I received. The long form, the 3508 and 3508 instructions, you have to work it backwards, offline. In other words, calculate the per employee averages wages during the covered period, compare those average wages to the January 1st and March 31st. In other words, the first quarter of the year. offline. In other words, use it on a piece of paper. Don't write it in on the application. We don't want to go back to our high school days when we're taking a test and we're making all these calculations and they were wrong and they were wrong and they were wrong, and we had all these scratches and eraser marks. Use a scratch piece of paper to make your calculations and then put them on the application itself. Calculate the full-time employee during the covered period. Again, compare to 1 to 3 reference periods. Fill out the worksheet tables for the Paycheck Protection Program Schedule A. Complete the PPP Schedule A. Complete the certification, sign, and complete the loan forgiveness application. This is the long form. Again, if you're a borrower that did not receive $50,000 or less and does not meet one of these 3 questions, you have to use the long form, okay? Alternative covered base period begins on the first day of the first pay period following disbursement, okay? An example of that would be, I received my money June 1st. The first day of my pay period after disbursement is June 7th, okay? That means that's when my next payroll cycle goes. So day 1, June 7th, and day 56 equals August 1st. In other words, we're using what covered period, right? Pay period 1, pay period 2, pay period 3, and pay period 4. So that gives you the date of when the forgiveness period is, when your covered period is, and how your payroll costs tie all into this. The payroll costs incurred during this alternative payroll period are eligible for forgiveness as long as they are paid on or before the first regular payroll date occurring after August 1st. And here's the examples I mentioned, okay? So it's very, very important. Folks that will fall under this alternative pay period will usually be those farm labor contractors. They will usually fall under this type of scenario. Still cap and payroll costs for self-employed and owner employees. Maybe sole proprietors cap lesser of 8 weeks or the 2019 compensation, or $15,385 cap per individual employee across all businesses. An example of that is 2019, the net compensation as my Schedule C, line 31, this is on your tax form, was $80,000. You take that $80,000, multiply that by 15.38%, your total is $12,304. So your $12,304 is less than $15,385. So your $12,304 is your maximum payroll cost, okay? No additional forgiveness for retirement health insurance because those expenses are paid out through your net self-employment income. Again, very, very important. There's questions that come up regarding taxes and how you would put the PPP loan, the expenditures, and the forgiveness amounts on your payroll, on your 2020 taxes. That I will not be able to answer. So if you have any tax questions, please go back to your CPA, your accountant. If you need assistance, let us know. We can connect you with one of our partners so that they can assist you with that. I'm not a tax professional and I cannot give tax advice. So if you have any tax questions, again, I'm going to have to refer you back to those tax professionals, your CPA or your accountant. Here's another example for the calculations on the salaries. I'm not going to get too deep into this. What I am going to do is I'm going to share this over with the ladies at the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, and then they can go ahead and distribute that to those of you that are on the webinar here today. That way you have these examples and how to do the calculations. Some of the other things that you have to do for the long form, for those of you that are going to be needing to do the long form. This is the Schedule A worksheet. As you can see, it's broken down by employee name, the ID if you have some, the compensation per employee. Are they considered an average full-time employee? Yes, no. Are they part-time? As you can see there. And the reduction in wages, there is none. So this would be an example of a worksheet that would qualify for loan forgiveness. And it tells you the step-by-step instructions on how you need to do that. Forgiveness is about a proportional limit on non-payroll costs. An example of that, I used $100,000, as I mentioned, $60,000 for payroll, $40,000 for non-payroll. Not perfect, you get a partial forgiveness. In other words, I used $54,000 for my payroll costs, and I used $36,000 for my non-payroll costs, which means that only $90,000 are going to be forgiven. The remaining $10,000 are not, and therefore I have to pay that back. So very important that we look at that, especially if we're trying to get a 100% loan forgiveness. You have to do this by the line, okay? Again, current forgiveness application and calculations, how you should do that. We went through an example of that. We'll go ahead and share this with you so you can have this and come back to it and reference it whenever you want, especially when you're doing your calculations. This here is just an example or an expansion of what we have already seen on the calculations, the different line items, and what you should be putting in for each of those items. Documents to submit, payroll. These are the documents that are going to be your supporting documents to the application that you're giving to the lender for forgiveness. Very important. If anything out of this whole webinar that you want to take away with you are the documents you need to submit and the application that you need to submit so you have a complete package. But more importantly, if you're looking for forgiveness, without these documents that we're going to talk about in the next few slides, your loan will not be considered, or your package will not be considered complete, and the loan may not be forgiven. So it's very important that you look at these documents. For payroll, amount of cash compensation paid. And how do you prove that? Either by a bank statement or payroll provider report. If you do your own payroll, such as QuickBooks, you want to download the report from the QuickBooks as well. Tax forms or payroll provider reports for the periods that overlap with the covered period, alternative period. You can also submit your payroll tax filings, which is most likely your IRS 941 that is reported or will be reported, your state and local payroll tax filings, your quarterly ones that are reported or will be reported, any payment receipts, canceled checks, or account statements documenting health insurance and retirement contributions. For full-time employees, this is your choice. The average number of full-time employees on payroll between February 15th and June 30th, January 1st and February 29th, 2020. What this is just saying is to demonstrate that prior to February 15th, this is where your business was at. Remember, February 15th is the magical date. That's when everything started, and that is the date that we have to go back and say, hey, before the pandemic, my business was doing this. This is how many employees I had. This is my payroll cost at that point in time. But you have the choice to tell us, this is where my business was at prior to the pandemic. Between February 15, 2019 and June 30, 2019, or between January 1st or February 29, 2020. But you have to submit that to us, okay? For seasonal employers, the dates change a little bit. February 15th to June 30th, January 1st through February 29th, or May 1st, 2019 and September 15, 2019, or any consecutive 12 weeks. Very important. Otherwise, we can't make the determination where your business was at with regards to the full-time employees, and your application may get kicked back or declined because there's no proof or to show us that you did in fact have 5 employees full-time prior to February 15, 2020. Non-payroll costs, documents verifying existing obligations, services prior to February 15, 2020. In other words, you can't submit an electric bill and say, I pay this electric bill on May 1st, 2020, because my service started on June 1st, 2020. That tells me that it's a brand new business, that you didn't have electricity prior to February 15, 2020, and therefore it's not an allowed cost. So it's very important that any service, especially the utilities, must have been started and ongoing prior to February 15, 2020. Otherwise, it's going to be considered a brand new account and therefore did not exist prior to the pandemic starting. And the magical date again is February 15, 2020. Business on mortgage interest. or real estate or personal, especially for those of you that work from home. Very important that you have proof of that. Amortization schedule and receipts or canceled checks. Again, if you're going to submit canceled checks or receipts, you must identify the total amount of the interest that you paid, and your payment receipt. In other words, if I'm going to have my bank statement saying this is my principal and interest, my interest is $150, I have to submit a check saying $150 paid to the bank with the memo interest only. Okay, that is an easy way to do it. That way, when you send this to the bank and ask for forgiveness, they know exactly that check was for the interest on your mortgage. Other things, lender account statements between the covered period that verify the interest amounts and eligible payments. For those of you that do any rent and leasing for your business, a copy of the current lease agreement or receipts or canceled checks, or lesser account statements, February 2020, covered period, plus 1 month after verifying payments. Utility payments, again, invoices from February 2020 and invoices during the covered period, canceled checks, and account statements. Other documents that you must hold on to, but you don't necessarily have to submit to us, will be Schedule A worksheet or its equivalent, documenting listing of each employee in the PPP Schedule A worksheet, Table 1 and Table 2, documentation of full-time employee reduction safe harbor, documentation of job offers, refusals, firing for cause, voluntary resignations, written request by employee reduction in hours. The only ones that you do have to submit to the unemployment office is those that are refusals. Okay, very important, and you have up to 30 days to submit that refusal to the EDD if you fall into one of those scenarios. Hold on with these documents for the next 6 years. Think of it as your tax documents, so you have to hold on to them for that amount of time. Again, if you need assistance to fill out these documents, SCORE, Central Valley Small Business Development Centers, Mission Community Service or Women's Business Center, and Veteran Business Outreach Centers are available to you at no cost. They are working virtually. They can do a Zoom, a Skype, Teams meeting with you one-on-one, and it can help you fill out those forms appropriately, so that when you go to your lender and you submit all your loan information, your loan application, you have that security that the information was done correctly and the documentation is the right documents that you need to submit. These are available, again, no cost to you, or if you want to reach out to the ladies at the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, they can also make those referrals over to partners that can assist you on a one-to-one. Unfortunately, for us at the SBA, we're unable to fill these documents out for you or assist you with the filling them out, only because we have partners that do that, and 2, we're the ones that are reviewing the documents as well. So very important. If you need assistance, reach out to us or the ladies at the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, and we can get you that business assistance that you need. Additional to the PPP, if you're still looking for some sort of funding not related to payroll, such as equipment purchases, expansions, and things like that, I highly recommend to use the Lender Match portal. This is something that it's been in existence for a while, but not all businesses know about it. If you're looking for funding, any type of SBA funding that's available to your business, go to this website here, click on the link, and fill out the application. When you fill out that application, it's sent out nationwide to all SBA participating banks and lenders and financial institutions, and someone's going to get back to you with that message saying, "Hey, I'm interested in what you're trying to do with your business. Let's start working together." Again, this goes nationwide. It's not necessarily just here locally, so you get more exposure for your business and your business needs than just going to the local bank here in Fresno County or the Central Valley. Other contact information, here's our website, sba.gov. Fresno@sba.gov is our contact email. For economic injury disaster loan questions, or you want to submit an application if you have not done so, those are the websites there. PPP FAQs and interim final rules treasury.gov websites, as I mentioned to you. Anything PPP related is on the Treasury website. Anything EIDL related is on the SBA website. So please, 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 when you look at these things, check both websites, especially when it comes to the PPP. If you're looking for additional funding, it hasn't been approved yet. If you want to know if everybody's going to get a loan forgiveness on their PPP regardless, which is still a rumor, we haven't heard anything about it. You want to check up on that. Those are the websites, the most important ones right now when it comes to EIDL and PPP. Last but not least, located an SBA approved lender, SBA.gov, Paycheck Protection. Type in the city, state, or zip code, and you can find a participating lender in your area. Other than that, questions? I'll move on to questions. If they're in the chat box, I'll go through those in the chat box first. And then after that, we can move on to the verbal questions if that's okay with everybody. I'm gonna go from bottom up. So please excuse me if you've already submitted your question. I'll get to your question here in a bit. Is a slideshow available? As I mentioned, I will make this available to Ruby, or one of the ladies at the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation, and they will go ahead and distribute that to those participants in this webinar. Is a contact person at Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation that can assist us if we have more questions regarding the application, or do we have any other questions about the PPP? My recommendation is reach out to them. They will help you find the contact person and that referral to that agency that can assist you. Again, the ones that we use here a lot of for assistance are these folks here: the SCORE, the SBDC, Mission Community Services, or the Women's Business Center. These are located in San Luis Obispo and Bakersfield. The Central Valley Small Business Development Centers are located all across the Central Valley. We have one here in Clovis at the Clovis Community College. Great center. They can assist you there as well. SCORE. So I would reach out to the girls or the ladies at Fresno Hispanic Foundation, and they'll put you in contact with the most appropriate person. So if by June 2020, I did not have the same number of full-time employees as I had on February 15, 2020, will my application be disqualified unless I meet the safe harbors? The answer is no. Your full-time employee count is taken in by the date of January 1st, 2020 through February 28, 2020, or what you had in 2019. So in order for you to determine what your full-time employee count was at that time, you have to go back in time prior to February 15th and look at what you had in order for you to determine which safe harbor will you fall under. So very, very important. Will your application be disqualified? It's not necessarily disqualification. It's more of can you prove it to me? Again, the dates on the full-time employees. Let me see if I can go back here in a bit. As you can see here, this is documentation that you need to prove to us of what your employee count was prior to February 15th. As again, February 15, 2019, or June 30th, 2019, June 1st, 2020, February 29th, 2020. What was your count at that time? And that's how you determine where your full-time employee count is during your covered period. Next question. Can cleaning services or IT services be eligible for non-payroll costs? Again, as we went through the presentation here, let's see if I can bring that up here in a bit. Non-payroll costs are these here. Anything outside of that would not be qualified as a forgivable portion. So very important. If it's not under here, you probably won't be able to take it. And there is no flexibility on that. So please, when you do non-payroll costs, you look at the listing the way it is. If your disbursement date of funds received was in May 4, 2020, does the start does that start the clock on my 24-week period to spend the money? And does that mean my covered period automatically ends on October 19th? Yes, that's when the clock starts on the 24-week period. So again, very important. You do have that 24-week period to expend the funds, but if you expend the funds prior to that 24th week, you want to submit your loan forgiveness application because you're still accruing interest. Also, I have to ask my bank if I can have a 5-year repayment term instead of a 2-year. Yes, that is correct. Your funds were dispersed prior to the June date. As I mentioned earlier, if your loan was dispersed prior, I think it was the June 20th, if I remember correctly. If not, I'll go back and look at it right now. For those loans that were dispersed prior to that date, your term is a 2-year. Anything after that June date, your term is an automatic 5-year. So it's very important, if you're under the 2-year term but want to turn it into a 5-year term, you have to ask the bank for that. Otherwise, it won't work that way. Does the current amount in the bank accounts matter even though it's in a separate bank account for asking for forgiveness? No. I'm not sure I quite understand that question. Does the current amount in the bank account matter even though it's in a separate bank account when asking for forgiveness? If you can send me a further explanation or details on that, Ms. Rodriguez, I'd appreciate it so I can better understand your question. I don't think I quite understand it to its fullest. We had 2 part-time employees, but one refused to come back. We have this documented and we made other part-time employee a full-time employee. Therefore, we're paying the same amount of hours, however, only to one person instead of 2. Is this considered restoring the full-time employee under the PPP loan forgiveness rules? Great question. Great question. Number 1, did you submit the documentation within the 30-day period to the EDD for that one employee that did refuse? That is going to be the first question. Second question is, there was no reduction in hours. You actually increased the hours to the other person. Therefore, your full-time employee equivalent prior to or as of versus last year is actually increased. So you would be good to go under the PPP loan forgiveness rules. Again, that is if for that individual that did refuse to come back to work, did you do your part as the employer and submit the documentation over to the EDD as required by the statutes? I only applied for the PPP loan and not for the SBA loan. Is the SBA still taking loan applications? Great question. We do and we are. There are multiple disaster declarations out there right now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about those disaster declarations. I know it's already past my 1-hour time, but there is the wildfire disaster declaration. Unfortunately, the Creek Fire and the SQF complex fire down in Tulare County have not yet been approved. And what that means is if you had any physical damage to your property because of any of those 2 fires, the Big Creek or the SQF complex, unfortunately, we're unable to provide a physical SBA disaster loan at this point in time. However, if your business or was affected because of either of those 2 fires, whether it be the Big Creek or the SQF complex fire, at this point in time, it still has not been approved. So it's very important that we look at that. So the Big Creek and the SQF have not been approved for disaster declarations. However, there have been fires up in Monterey County, Sonoma County, and a little bit farther south than San Benito County that have affected those businesses in Fresno and Tulare County. So if you have a business, I think Tulare and Kings, including Fresno, but if your business was affected because of those fires in that area, you can submit a SBA economic injury disaster loan application, and you can submit a COVID-19 disaster application for EIDL, and you would be able to get processed for both separately. So yes, you can apply for a COVID. We start taking our applications. There are still funds available for that. And if you were affected by the fires in the Monterey, San Benito County areas, you can also make a claim for EIDL because of that. Now, one of those things is, how do I know, or how does that work? Well, one of the things is COVID-19 has already affected our businesses because we can't open them. But when we were able to open our businesses and provide outdoor services for those of you that could, what was the issue at that point in time was the air quality. The ash was falling from the sky, the air was hard to breathe, it was unhealthy, and so maybe your business was affected because of that. So very important that when you look at these disaster declarations and you submit EIDL applications, they will be asking for proof of how your business was affected. For those businesses that were affected by the SQF complex in Tulare or the Big Creek fire, we're still trying to figure out what's going on. We haven't received any further information on that. One of the things, or one of the questions, and one of the confusions that's coming up for those that are self-employed or are contractors, how do I prove how much I paid myself, or that I use the PPP to pay myself my own wages? And unfortunately, some of us, when we're self-employed, we don't do the appropriate financial steps to protect ourselves. The most important thing about this is we have to separate business from personal. Very important that we do that. If you haven't done so, where you have your business account and your personal account together, my recommendation is to start separating those two as soon as you can. Very important to separate your business and your personal, even if you're a sole proprietor or independent contractor or whatnot. Very important. Number two, if you do have them separated, where you have your business account and then you have your personal account, the PPP funds are going to be dispersed into your business account. From there, you can do your own transfer. You can write yourself a check, and you're going to put on the memo that it is under PPP for payroll costs. So when that transfer occurs from bank account, business bank account to your personal bank account, we'll be able to see that, yes, in fact, there was a transfer of, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000. And at the memo, it's going to say the transfer reason, PPP payroll cost, or self-payroll, self-payment, whatever it is. As long as you show that it was through the PPP and it was transferred from your business to your personal, that's a way of demonstrating that it's an actual cost for payroll. If you're one of those individuals that have your business account with your personal account mixed in all together, that one's going to be a little bit more difficult to demonstrate because you have other monies mixed in. And I think that's what your question might be, Ms. Rodriguez, now that I think about it. What if you have all those monies mixed in? How do you determine or how do you prove what's what? You can do a numerous amount of things. It's up to you. But again, the only recommendation I can say is you want to separate your business from your personal. So I don't know, maybe you can open up a separate account, transfer the PPP loan funds into that new account that you open up, and then start paying yourself back that way. I mean, there's other options that you can do. Again, I'm not a financial expert. I'm not a tax expert either. If you have a CPA or accountant, I would ask them first. If you don't have somebody like that, again, you can follow up with us at SBA.gov or Fresno at SBA.gov for email. That way, or talk to the ladies at the Fresno Area Hispanic Foundation. We can refer you to someone that can provide that assistance to you. My business office is at home. My mortgage interest can be applied to the 40% on the PPP loan forgiveness. Yes, that is correct. Again, one of the things that you're going to have, the burden of proof is going to fall on you to demonstrate that your home business, quote unquote, was reported in your 2019 tax returns. Okay, so another important thing to look at is, did this business actually exist prior to February 15th out of your home? If so, was it reported on your taxes? If so, then yes, you can put your mortgage interest on this under the PPP loan forgiveness guidelines. However, if after February 15, 2019, let's say March 1st, you were sent home to work from home, or you closed your shop and you're working from home now, can you apply that to the PPP loan forgiveness? And the answer is no, because your quote unquote home business started after February 15th start date. So very important that when we start looking into our own personal business, what was it in existence prior to, and was it legitimately reported on our tax returns? If it was, then yes, the answer is yes. You can definitely put the mortgage interest on there. If it's not, then I'm sorry. When we ask you the question, prove to me that this home business existed prior to February 15th out of your house. So again, we want to keep those things in mind. Any other questions? We're done with the chat questions. Any other questions from any other participants? Please go ahead and mute yourself and we can go from there. Or otherwise, I want to thank you for staying on a little bit longer. Yeah, so I'll wait, we can see.
Thank you, Victor. Oh, there you are. Okay, lastly, I would like to share our upcoming webinars. We have a webinar coming up this Friday, October 16 at 1 p.m. With the Berkeley attorneys. It's a free legal workshop on doing business online during COVID-19. And then on Friday, October 23rd at 10 a.m. With the City of Fresno, we will be talking about the reopening guidelines during COVID-19. Both registrations are now open and you're able to register by visiting our website at fresnoahf.org/events. Here's our contact information, and if you have any further questions, you are welcome to contact us by calling 559-222-8705. I would like to thank Victor for being our guest speaker, and I want to thank everybody who was able to join us today. Once again, everyone will receive a copy of this webinar's recording through an email. Thank you and have a great day. Is there any more questions before I finish the meeting?
Marketing cost can be applied to the forgiveness, the 40% forgiveness?
Marketing what, I'm sorry?
The marketing cost, if we do some marketing for the business, can be applied to the 40%?
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately, marketing is not covered in under the non-payroll costs.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Okay, this concludes our presentation. And once again, thank you so much, Victor. And I hope everybody has a great day. And if you do come across a question, you're always welcome to give us a call, once again, at 559-222-8705. Or you can email your questions at incubator@fresnodbh.org. Thank you. And, oh, wait, I think it's, yeah, let's see in the chat box real fast. Oh, thank you. Okay, have a great day, everybody.